Okay, and we are live. And today, sadly, Chris is going to be late, but he'll be actually our guest crasher. Can't even talk. Guest crasher, because our guest crasher is already here today on time. And so I guess Chris will be our guest crasher. But before then, we want to go ahead and get right into the news. And I'd like to introduce you to my cat back here. That's Slow-Mo. And then our great little pumpkin here. And by the way, it is also the anniversary of my wife, Shavaun, and I. And for some reason, we decided to get married on Halloween. And every 5 years, we have some type of Halloween uh, regathering event. That's not this year, but we are going to the Day of the Dead festival down in Santa Barbara tomorrow. And we're going to have face painting, and I plan to go out using the structure sensor and scan our faces and put it up on Sketchfab. So if you get a chance, go ahead and go out there. So with that, we'll go right into our first item, and that is the Sketchfab itself. Well, Sketchfab just announced, which is kind of funny because I've kind of known for some time that Sketchfab has had the ability to download, or at least she's given you the option when you put something up on their site. So if you go out there today, you'll notice that there is a series of different types of things that are available for download from what they call their popular picks of the week. So these things you can actually download and bring right to your machine. So like this one here looks like a cool one, so I'll go ahead and click on it. And then, yeah, we don't want to translate. So some of these things can take a little bit of time. I assume, Mike, that you've been out to this before. So what I'm going to do, Mike, if just to avoid noise, is I'm going to mute you. So if I do forget that I've asked you to talk, do you know how to unmute yourself?
I think so.
Okay, over on the right-hand side, there should be a little, or up on top, or I'm sorry, down on the bottom, there should be an option. So I'll go ahead and do so now. Okay, and then you should be able to unmute you when you're ready to go ahead and talk. That way we'll avoid the noise from New York. So once you bring it up in Sketchfab, as you can see, this is a fairly cool looking scan model, and it says it's an incense burner holder, but it looks like just the front portion of it. But then you can click download now, and well, make sure I'm logged in. All right. And then hit download, and then a few seconds later it'll be on your machine. So I'll just stick it in my downloads folder, and voila. So if you are in the creative market, like Mike is, now he has the opportunity to not only upload for people to view, but people can also download. So hats off to Sketchfab. I think that's a neat feature. And if you go out to my own site, you will find some of the models that I have. So some of these models I just put up there, I scanned, but they are licensed objects. I'm wondering how they'll handle that in the future. So I do not make these particular items available for download for obvious reasons, but this was something that I scanned for the Halloween season. But I do have objects that we can go back to that are original, or original scans, and we'll go down a little bit further, and you might recognize this guy. There he is, Chris himself, our co-host, and he's available for download. So if you got nothing better to do with your printer, go ahead and download Mr. Chris there. So Chris, you're going to be downloaded. Oh well. So that's the end of Sketchfab, and we'll move right into the next item. And again, Chris should be joining us shortly. And that next item is, I'm going to give a kind of a shout out to Michael Mullichho. He's the one that did the interview with me last week. And if you remember, there was several articles about my, I guess, my journey into 3D printing and using 3D medical tools in order to derive a tangible model, which I can actually show you. And you may have seen this last time. This is a model of my wife. who had a bony meningioma, and through the process, if you read the articles by Michael Melichel, you'll see what I'm talking about, so I won't spend a lot of time here. But I want to give a shout out because he's written a lot of fun articles. Obviously, this is his Halloween article here, but he also has a few other more serious articles. One of the things that I remember reading about some time ago is always his articles on guns, and he has obviously a good opinion about guns, and obviously there's some concern about it. But the other thing is that the White House celebrates the holidays with Instructables 3D printing contest, so it's kind of neat that the President of the United States is kind of backing the whole maker thing. They've got their own program. So if you want to be involved with this, just go ahead and hang out there, and it's called a 3D Printed Ornament Challenge. And one of the things that I thought I would do this holiday is work with our community library and set up a class. First weekend would be designing an ornament, and then the second week would be actually printing it. So right around the holidays. So it's interesting that the president himself has decided to do something similar. We must think alike. Okay, but then he's got other stories. You're welcome to go out there. Just go out to 3dindustry.com and the author, Michael, and you'll see all of his articles, or you can read other things by 3D Printing Industry. But he's got a lot of great articles out there, and I appreciate his writing. So on to my third item. Again, in light of my recent journey plus our seminar that we just finished up on Wednesday, one of the things that I try to promote is the empowerment of all these new tools, that if you have some skill, you have a 3D printer, or you have some modeling skills, there are tools now, and I'm actually going to give a tutorial a little bit later, like products like InVesallius and 3D Slicer that allow you to bring in your DICOM CT scans or MRIs, and from there create tangible objects. And the tangible objects that you have in place are whatever you'd like. So in this case, this man or this gentleman had some symptoms that were very painful in his neck, and was able to literally bring them in like I did and derive a tangible object, print it, and take it into a doctor and say, hey, look at these images here. I've got this particular condition which literally breaks this particular bone, and that bone is, let's see if it tells us in here. No, it does, but I've already found, actually it says right here, a hyoid bone, which is located right above the larynx, and they couldn't figure it out. And I don't know if they had taken a CT scan and just missed it, or the fact is 3D provides another level that a person can rotate, modify, but he distinctly saw the break. He brought in the model. I don't know if he actually printed it or just brought in a visualization, but brought it into a specialist, and they said sure enough, so they were able to move forward with this, and I guess it's called a hyoid bone syndrome. And again, hats off to another individual empowering himself with 3D in order to determine for themselves what their problem is and go to somebody who can handle it. So good article there. And I noticed that Chris has joined us.
All right.
So hi, Chris. So if you've got some of your news items up and running, we'll go ahead and move forward with yours. And
here.
And then after that, we're going to introduce Mike. He's a 3D artist, and I caught him on the web. He's created this interesting little character that he seems to carry around with him all the time. And so I thought we could talk with him and a little bit about that.
So pretty exciting news on the front of the HP announcement. That was my big one. There was a couple big HP announcements this week. This one in particular, they announced their multi-jet fusion technology. So if you didn't get a chance to read about that, that was pretty interesting. So here's some screens of the machine, and there hasn't been too much released. You can go out to HP's YouTube video, which we'll have in the show notes, and there's basically some intro videos talking about the printer. But they're claiming that it's basically stronger, faster, and less expensive than any commercial machine on the market. So big claims coming out of them, coming out of HP. Really interested. I already have an inquiry in to try to find out about what, I want to see one of these in person. I definitely want to check one of these things out. So big announcement. We've been waiting for this announcement for, several months. We've been talking about it on and off on the show. So, but it looks like they actually have some screens of the machine itself, and so pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool, Chris. I didn't get much time to check it out, so do they have a price along with it? It looks like it's going to be fairly pricey.
I don't know of any pricing. I don't think they have any pricing information. They just said it's less expensive than the equivalent machines on the market. So I think they're going to be pretty aggressive as far as pricing, being that they're HP and that it's already kind of a market they're not first to market. They'll be, that you've already got Stratasys, Objet, 3D Systems, and you've got a lot of these smaller consumer grade machines, and I think they'd like to see a lot of these consumers go prosumer. So I think it's kind of coming at the same time as that Cube Pro machine, and from a marketing standpoint, I think they're gonna be best served positioning themselves as a prosumer and be really aggressive with the pricing, and I have a feeling they're gonna do the same thing that they do with their inkjet printers, which is offer the machine at even a loss and then make up for it with the materials. The materials are where they're going to get you.
Well, I like the fact that they finally come into the market. This really will kind of push the game for some of the others that have kind of lagged because they've been leaders as far as bringing their prices down. So hopefully we'll see some price cuts across the board. As mentioned in our last episode, we did see something like that in the 3D Systems, their Cube Pro. Remember, it was originally supposed to be $7,000. It has already dropped $2,000. So maybe this is part of the reason for that. Now that people are going to have other options and maybe even more powerful options. So very cool. I don't know why. I feel like Shavaun is looking at me. I don't know why. For you, Mike, the image behind me is what we use for 3D in medicine. So it's kind of a merge of different CT and MRIs from her. So that's why I made that comment.
And Mike, you're going to have to put up a real high-res image of the poster you did, as high-res as you can. I'd blow it up huge. And what I would say is, like, any of the listeners at home that have anaglyph glasses or whatever, check out Mike's poster. He spent some time on it, and it is incredibly cool poster to be able to check out stereoscopic anything. I mean, anything that I just love 3D. Come on, we're just... we got the 3D thing going. Let's just.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris. And on that note, I'll go ahead and bring up the fact is that we did do our 3D in Medicine on Wednesday. There is a website, 3dinmedicine.org, that you can go out to if you missed it. There are links out to the YouTube video, which is up. I plan to edit a little bit more over the weekend. We did have a few glitches, but for overall, I think the thing went really well. And I was very happy with it. And but I will put out a PDF that's out there, and if there is people that want the poster, I'll make sure that there is a JPEG as well as a large PNG file that you can put on your anaglyph glasses. I mean, that's the blue cyan red versions, and take a look at it yourself. So thanks for that. So, Chris, do you have a few other news items, or do we want to just...
Well, I've got one more this morning, and it kind of is along the same things. Really, I was dedicated to the HP announcement this week. I I also found they also have a this new product that they announced called Sprout, and it's not necessarily full 3D, but it's a really interesting product nonetheless, and it has some 3D implications. You got to go watch the videos on the website to really get an understanding of what it does and how it works. But essentially, it's an all-in-one computer, and it's got this kind of funny-looking thing off the top of it, and it has cameras and a projector that project onto this pad down here. This is also a touch sensitive, like a drawing tablet, if you will. So this can essentially the top thing can essentially act as a scanner so you can interact in ways with this. It actually turns this into almost like an iPad, but it can actually like 3D scan stuff, they're claiming. So I don't know if they have infrared or how it works exactly. I mean, we'll have to wait until iFixit does a teardown of it, but it looks like a really interesting product. Kind of going to change the way we interact even further with our computers. I think they're kind of exploring the limits of how we interact, and it definitely has the ability to do some sort of 3D spatial recognition, whether it's your gestures or they have a video where they place an object on here and it somehow captures it in 3D onto the screen. Now, I don't know if that's sales puffery or not, but pretty interesting. So this is the HP Sprout. We're not taking money from HP. They just made 2 announcements, and they announced this platform alongside their prosumer 3D printer this week because I think they're somewhat related, and they did a little PR blitz. So pretty cool. Here's the machine. It's not cheap, but it's also not. I mean, it's not super expensive. So, yeah, for $1,900, you can buy the base model.
So what is it, a laptop, or is that how big is that screen?
But it folds up, and it's semi-portable. So it's like a portable all-in-one desktop.
So what's the size of the screen?
The size of the screen, I think it's pretty big. It's a 23-inch, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
23-inch, and I mean, it looks like a pretty cool, and it's got all the latest, greatest. It's got an i7. It's got, it's got 8 gigs, and I'm sure you can upgrade it. These all-in-one PCs nowadays, they just make life pretty easy. They're hard to repair sometimes, but for grandma, if you're trying to get grandma up and running, and you don't want to give her a bunch of wires that'll clutter her desk and make it really confusing for her, these all-in-ones really are a great way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. If we both are aware of it, Chris. We both have the. By the way, there's the website behind me. But we both have these all-in-ones. I have that Dell 27-inch, and I really like it. It was more reasonably priced than the Apple, even though the latest Apple all-in-one is pretty sweet. It's that 5K for $2,500, but that's the lower end, and it's kind of fixed in what you can do with it. So these all-in-ones, like you said, are really great. So on that note, I'm going to move to talk with our guest today, our guest crasher. Yeah, let me cut over to my
Hi, guest crasher.
And our guest crasher today, I'll let him introduce himself, is Mike, and I will give him back his microphone. He did it himself. And he is from New York, and there's some stuff. I see something behind you, peering down at you.
Yes. That's one of our prints of a 3D scan. That was actually done at the iMaker. I'm working at iMaker New York, and that was at the iMaker London office. And now we have a system that's much stripped down from what they're doing and creating similar scans. So
what is iMaker?
Okay, so iMaker is a 3D printing store. They sell printers, they sell filament, but we also have design services, and we have an online curated marketplace for 3D models. So you can download the models for free and print them out yourself, or you can have us print it out for you, and we charge. There's a service fee for that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well,
And we have this
behind
program for scanning. I'm sorry.
that's yeah, we'll talk about that. And while I bring up your website behind me, this is your website, and one of the things that caught my attention is you also have a little friend with you that you wanted to give him a shout out. He's awful quiet for some reason, but this is your site, and I'm assuming
There he is. He grabbed it.
Yeah, there we go. It's better over here.
but these are some of the models it looks like that you created.
Yeah, that's correct.
This lizard guy looks really familiar.
Yeah, that was actually my thesis project. So about a year ago, I got my master's from NYU in digital imaging and design, and I was specializing in 3D.
Wow.
So yeah, mainly in modeling, but I'm a 3D generalist, so a little bit of everything, and
You're a
visual
3D
effects as
generalist.
well.
Awesome. Look at this.
Very neat. Yep, very interesting. Oh, that's kind of neat.
This is like
That was my first 3D printing project. So we had that as an elective course, and I modeled a spaceship in Cinema 4D, and we printed that out on the Object Connects 500. So
Okay.
yeah, so that was about 3 years ago. So that was printed in resin.
Very,
And it's
very
about 6
cool.
inches in diameter, I believe.
wow.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about those resin-based printers is the detail for the size of the object, which
Yeah, PolyJet definitely has its perks. That's for sure. Wow, look at these models. Yeah, so iMaker, they are one of the few places you can get color fab material. Is that correct?
Correct, and we even have a flexible material now that we're selling and printing in called NinjaFlex.
Yeah, NinjaFlex.
We offer a lot of different products, a lot of different printers, a lot of different filaments, and everything.
Yeah, and I saw in an email yesterday you guys are announced you guys are carrying the B9 Creator in stock.
Correct. I don't think we got it in stock at the New York store yet, but they have it in London, and I think we're getting them here as well.
Got it. So you have a partnership in London. That's how you have your in with the color fab.
Right, exactly. Yeah, iMaker started out in London, and they have a few locations
using
there.
3D Slicer. For those of you who are unfamiliar
Really,
with what
really
Slicer
neat.
actually is, it's a completely
So
free
why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about your
visualization
friend there
analysis.
and how he was
So
created
from the Slicer
and
webpage,
how you went about doing that.
in the description box below this
Okay.
video.
Well,
During this tutorial, I'm going to highlight
this
just
is,
a few features that exist within Slicer, but you can explore other
Getting
capabilities
something coming
using
through
the
here.
Slicer wiki, and I'll place a link to that in the description box below the video as well.
We can hear you.
So,
Yeah,
that being
okay.
said, let's jump
I
in.
hear a woman's voice.
Again,
Yeah,
the
me
purpose of
too.
the tutorial is to prepare data
I
for
don't.
3D printing.
Oh.
So I'll begin with a cone beam CT that a patient had done after
Oh, wait.
surgery.
Um,
Sorry, it's a little distracting.
You're playing something on
sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a service called Mini-U, and that's where we do full body scans of people. Sometimes we just print busts, but we can do full body scans, and then we print it out on a Z-Core printer. And they have a Z-Core printer at the iMaker London store. We don't have that here yet, so we're having them do the prints, but we're probably going to send out for prints here. And what I came aboard to do is, for this one project, to create a 3D scanning system. And in their London office, they have a booth with 60 DSLRs. And
It's a
here
serious
we're
investment.
Yeah, exactly. It's a major investment to do that, and the printer as well. So since this is a new store, they opened up here in June. And now this service, which is very popular in London, didn't know how quickly it would take off here. So, and we have a very limited amount of space as well. So I created a system that uses 4 cameras instead of 60, and we're simulating 60 cameras by using a turntable, right?
By using a what?
Turntable.
We're using a turntable.
Oh.
So we have someone stand on a turntable and we spin them around and we keep shooting until I get basically 60 cameras worth of images.
That's awesome. And you're using Autodesk 123D Catch, or what photogrammetry software are you using?
Yeah, for what we're using is a program called PhotoScan. It's by Agisoft. And
Agisoft PhotoScan.
Yeah, and it's pretty inexpensive, and it really does a fantastic job, you know, as long as you give it the right information.
Yeah, Chris, that's what I'm going to be using, and Mike and I have already been talking, and we'll do it off camera because I don't really want to announce it right now, but I've got some interesting ideas, and I think I've mentioned it to you before. But that's really cool, and what's funny is that in the news is Artec, and then there's another company in, I think from Berlin, who's come up with a product, and we're going to be doing interviews with them soon. Now, the product from Berlin is, I have a feeling, horrendously expensive, probably $50,000 to $100,000, but it creates some pretty superb scans. And the great thing is, unlike both the Artec and sadly our systems, is that it's in real time, or very close to it. It's like in, what do they say, 0.01 second? So 10 millisecond capture. So pretty much you can move around, and they've actually caught things in action. So it's kind of neat. We'll talk about it more in one of the interviews next week. I've got that lined up. And then the other group is Artec. You may be familiar with them, Mike. They've got an extremely, well, I won't say extreme, they have an expensive hand scanner. And what they've done is they've taken that hand scanner and taken 4 of them, if I remember correctly, and kind of ganged them up and then created a turntable-style system like we're both familiar with, and they're put it together to make a booth themselves, and they're trying to get people on. But they never identified the price for it, and if you look at the price of their hand scanners, it's like anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 a piece. So let's say that you even drop the price to half, you're still looking at $50,000 for a booth, which is still probably, in my opinion, too pricey for most people.
Right.
But they're trying to create a similar type of turnkey system, and they also are having what they call their Artec Scan Pro system, if I remember correctly, that uses the Kinect, and then you can get a T-shirt and start promoting their service, and they'll give you like $10,000 worth of credit towards printing. So I really don't know what all the smokes and mirrors are, and maybe we'll talk more next week. I think the interview is lined up on Tuesday, Chris, with their CTO. So it'll be real interesting to hear more about that. But I like yours. So what, you want to talk a little bit about the price, and do you plan to offer this, Mike, for others, maybe a licensing system, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the scanning system is kind of based on what they were doing in London, and actually the CEO of the company, well, actually he's the founder and president, Sylvain Prumont, came up with the original idea for this system, and then I came in, made some changes to it, and implemented it, and now we're getting at least as good scans as what they're getting in London with the 60 cameras using only 4. And I have a new system that I'm going to be building soon for a client that looks a little bit more like the Artec system. It's still using cameras, but we're going to have the cameras rotate around the subject versus spinning the subject. So we're going to have a stage in the center, and then the cameras are going to go around the person.
Okay. And again, that would be similar to Artec's.
Right.
Is there the reason you chose that particular camera, or could you have gone with, let's say, the 7D or something like that? That's go ahead.
Yeah, we're using these cameras because they're the same make and model that the London system was using. So just to keep things consistent, I guess, and that's what they were used to using. So that's what I was provided with. Um, and we're using the kit zoom lens, which is an 18 to 55. And I guesstimated where 50 millimeters would be on that, and that's what I set the cameras to, because that's a normal lens, and the software seems to like that the best. But I think actually at other settings, we're getting good results too. But when I'm scanning people, that's generally what I'm going with.
And do you know the actual scan resolution? What's the number of faces and the resolution of the texture? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, for that, it kind of varies based on like what settings that I have in PhotoScan. For final model right now, I have it set to do 5 million polygons. So we're getting good details with that.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
With my 4 eyes, I'm getting around 2.5, and that's for half torso, so 5. That seems more than adequate. How about your textures?
Textures, I'm trying to think now what I have that set at, and I don't quite recall. I want to say it's like 1048 or something like that for pixels. But yeah, I don't recall what I have the textures as. That's just what we're saving it as. But
so you're talking about 1024 by 1024, and it's UV mapped out to that, or do you have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And we're not shooting in RAW because the way I have it set up, the signals being sent over for USB, it wasn't able to handle that from all 4 cameras at once. That's with our capture software, which is called Smart Shooter, and which is a really inexpensive program, and it allows me to see all 4 cameras at the same time and also reorient them, because the cameras are on their sides when they're shooting. So this allows us to get it in portrait mode. And
do you open this Open Shooter? Is this a piece of software that you provide, or is it another?
No, this is another company, and yes, Smart Shooter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. But what I'm sending to it now is large JPEGs. So we're on the highest settings for JPEGs. We're not sending out RAW files, and we're only doing JPEGs. I also have a remote connected to the shutter of each camera, and so there's a little bit of issues with signals coming through that, and also with the USB. And there's like a very particular way of setting it up so everything works. But when it works well, and I know exactly how to do it now. So there's a lot of troubleshooting involved.
Very cool, very cool. And that, like I mentioned in the emails, and we'll talk more later, it's about the same direction that I'm going, except I will be developing an iOS app, and we'll just leave it at that, to do something similar to Smart Shooter. So very, very cool. I'm glad to see that there's a lot of innovative people out there trying to create something a little cheaper, and it appears like you could probably do this with a 7D, which is obviously a little bit more reasonable camera. Now, if I remember, the camera that you're using is a full frame, right?
I think so. You know what we have is the Canon 1100D. It's a like EOS camera.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was full frame or APS-C actually.
Okay, I don't actually remember. I know the 70 is APS-C, so if it is APS-C, you could probably just swap them out.
Yeah.
Because they're also USB controlled, and well, I'd like to talk more about it. It seems fun, and maybe you could put together a package and some instructions for people, and I would suggest, making a little money off of it. I think there's a lot of people out there developing the whole thing for people to do on their own.
Yeah, well,
sounds.
I'm actually putting together an Instructable about this, and the next system that I'm designing, I'm thinking about maybe that would be something to develop further as a system to sell that I think would be more reliable and, get good results. I mean, we're not just going to be doing people with it, but kind of large sculptures and other kinds of items. But this system as it stands, minus the computer, with all the hardware and software is about $3,000.
Yeah, and that's very reasonable compared to some of these other systems that are close to 100,000 with them, like you said, 60 cameras. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing some more of your sculptures online that you've scanned, and then more information. And please let me know when you plan to put something up on Instructable, and I'll make sure that we'll put it in the show notes or mention it in the next show. So again, Thank you, Mike, for coming on. I apologize for the delay today, and on that, I'll mute you if you want to hang on, or you're welcome to just drop off. And appreciate our guest crasher, Michael. And for some reason, I don't remember the last name, so helping me out here.
Oh, Parker.
Michael Parker. And thank you again. And you can find him where?
MichaelAParker.com.
Great. Well, thank you again.
iMaker.
Yes.
Yeah, and iMaker.
And where's the office? Tell our listeners where that office is.
Okay, so we're on Allen Street in the Lower East Side of New York.
And it's by appointment, or you can it's open to the public?
Oh, it's open to the public. Yes.
Oh, great. Well, next time we're in New York, we're there.
Great. And thanks for having me on.
Hey.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, Chris, if you want to move on with your Print Whisperer or any projects or that, I'm going to talk about mine, and then I'm going to go into the tip. Since I didn't get a chance during our 3D in Medicine to talk about how to actually take CTs and create your own 3D printable skull or whatever of your body, I thought I'd give a quick tutorial today on that, and plus some links out to some tutorials done by other people.
My project for the week, big one. I just added one of these puppies to my lineup. So just added a Lulzbot TAS4. They announced a dual extruder modification last week that we covered in our Friday episode last week, but it's not actually going to be available until Monday. So on what is that? That'll be November 3rd. They're starting shipping. So I got mine on the way. One nozzle is a Buddhist nozzle. The other nozzle is a what they call the Flexi Extruder. So they have what's called the Flexi Dually, and they haven't even put it on their website yet. It's going on Monday, but I got my order in a little early. So going to add one of these to my lineup. It's coming. It'll be here sometime next week. The Flexi Extruder excels at extruding materials like Ninja Flex, like we were talking about a little earlier, and the Buddhist nozzle is great at just your typical run-of-the-mill materials. The only downside of the printer is I'm gonna have to start investing in a portfolio of 3mm filament, because all my other printers run 1.75. So now I'm going to be investing in some 3mm filament. No big deal. Adafruit apparently has a easy way to convert your 3mm Lulzbot printer to a 1.75, so I may go down that road. But for a while, I think I'm going to just keep my TAS4 up and running stock with the Dually Flexi head on it, and we'll see how it goes. And hopefully by next week's Friday episode, I'll be reporting to you what I've been printing.
Very, very cool. So, anything else you want to bring up? How about tips or?
Well, my tips this week are pretty limited.
Yeah, I kind of wore you out, didn't I?
Yeah. My tips this week are plan ahead for the unexpected. As we found, we did a 3D symposium earlier this week on Wednesday, and we didn't have access to the venue as early as we anticipated, and it caused a little downstream delay. But
not that I didn't try, but yeah, totally agree. And I think there's a failure on a few parts there. But we were only 17 minutes late, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I was frantic and probably lost half of my liver whatever the component
So
is.
maybe
that,
my tip this week will be under-promise and over-deliver rather than over-promise and under-deliver. That's always the better way to go.
Well, thank you for that. I'll have to keep that in mind, maybe.
It's just what my dad used to tell me all the time.
Yeah, since I was up to 4 last night setting up this system that I'm using now that I think is really working out well. You can see that I'm a little person down on the other end there. But before I get into that, another cool thing about this system is that I have multiple cameras. So I'm actually going to cut to another camera that shows a close-up of some of the models that I've been working on. One of the things that in the 3D medicine, what kind of prompted that is the ability to take using these software applications, InVesallius as well as 3D Slicer, and taking that and extracting surfaces that can then be printed. The reason that I was motivated to do that, and I've actually turned this into a Halloween decoration, so let me put it down here. There we go. So, okay. So if you can see, there's a little light in here. Ooh, so it's kind of spooky. We kind of talked about that last week. But more importantly, off to the left of this, if you can look at it, is what was considered a bony meningioma. And by printing it, it became very clear, and then we were able to take this model with us. But more importantly, I was also able to send a very similar one-time scale model to her surgeon, and also create 3D volume renderings and put them out on Sketchfab for them to view. And it's interesting is that after sending it to Johns Hopkins, they decided that they couldn't use this particular procedure that my wife had, which is to go through her eyelid. They would have to go above the eyelid. So we chose University of Pittsburgh because they pretty much did it through her eyebrow. And if you look at some of the articles out there, or if you go out to 3D in Medicine, the website, you can see the dramatic differences. She is pretty much completely healed after 3 months, and you would really, if I didn't tell you about it, and you would even have to look very closely, then you would not see a difference between the eyes. She does have some headaches, and we think that's due to some other conditions that I prefer not to talk about today. But for the most part, she's doing excellent. And she was literally back to work in 3 weeks seeing clients. So,
that's so great. That's so great.
But again, here's some other models. Here's a smaller version. This was the pocket version that I created, so that, and again, you can see the meningioma, so that if I needed to pull it out to explain to somebody where her tumor is, or actually what she did is she took it to a lot of her physicians and showed it to them so they could really see for themselves. So it was kind of so we call this the pocket or the purse version. But after that, once she had the tumor removed, I then took the actually higher resolution CTs from UPMC and created both a sagittal cut, which is this here, and if you can see this hole, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I see it.
Come back. There we go. This hole here, that's not good. Okay. My cameraman is not cooperating with me. But I'm having to work in mirror. But this hole is what's left now. It's about a 3.2 centimeter. And like I said, I don't really want to get into it, but we do have some concerns about that. But the reason we think that it was never, I mean, it's still there, that they didn't put titanium mesh or other surface, synthetic mesh, is because I consider it the ship in the bottle kind of model, where it was easy to extract the material. They used a micro-Dremel tool and probably some suction to be able to remove the bone surface out of there. But how do you put something back in there? And I think that's part of the problem with this minimally invasive, is that they have to come up with new techniques to replace things. The option in the past for people with congenital problems with holes is that they literally have to do a standard craniotomy, move the brain, which can have its own side effects like blindness, and then put the patch in there. Obviously, my wife has not made that decision to do that, probably will never make that decision to do that, because that's why we went with this direction, because there's just too many side effects to the standard craniotomies. So with that, I've also created some other Halloween specials based upon that skull. Ooh, there's actually a light in there. And then I thought, well, these are all done using FDM, and the quality can't sometimes be good. So I thought I'd do the entire skull on the Formlab in the clear material. So, there you go. I plan to add a little light to that, make a little night light next to me so that I'll always have her next to me. And in the spirit of Halloween, nothing better than having skulls. And nothing better in my heart, since it's our anniversary, Chris, to have my wife's skull by my side all the time. So there we go. So,
Kill me, Mike.
Yeah, I know.
I just had a picture of a CHP pulling you over at a traffic stop, and you having that skull in the big one over on your passenger seat, and the cop asks, "What are you doing with this?" And you're like, "Oh, it's just my wife's skull."
I'm just keeping her close to me.
Really understanding.
Also, I didn't mention it, but using the MRIs, I was able also to extract the brain, and I'm actually going to go through a little demo here shortly on how to do this. The brain is obviously much more difficult, especially on MRIs, because MRIs are, depending on the MRI, are more grayscale based, so you really have to do a little bit more cleanup in the process. And I'm sorry?
It takes more fine tuning and you're using InVesallius for all this, correct?
I've used two different programs to do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a YouTube version of 3D Slicer. Somebody's already prepared a fairly nice that I'm going to go through right now. So let me switch over to that screen, and we'll go ahead and start it. Let me know if that's too loud. I turned it off on my end. Can you hear that? That's that woman's voice again.
I can't hear anything.
Okay, let's see if I can turn that up. Okay. How about now? Can you hear it now? Can you hear it now?
I don't. But you'll have to put the link in the show notes and let me know.
Yeah, well, here we go. All right, here we go. Can you hear it now?
I can hear it now.
Okay, so essentially she's going to go through and identify what she needs to do, take the CT scans, and then derive from that the tangible models. So she goes through the whole process. So what I'm going to do is kind of skip through it a little bit. So here we go, introduction to 3D Study, loading your data, cropping, creating a label map, building the model. And it's literally, that I wouldn't say easy, but it's very, I can't say it's intuitive. I'm going to pause right here. So essentially, the first thing you do is you load in your DICOM data. And once that's loaded in into the database, which, let's see what they get to it. Okay, so here we have the DICOM data, and then you need to create a volume render, which gives you the three-dimensional look to it, which they'll do in a moment once they isolate it. Well, they load it, they're going to actually do some cropping. Okay, so there you go. There's your volume render, and notice how realistic it looks. But the problem is if you just left it like that and used the tools in order to create the surface, that's probably in her case way more than what she wanted. She was doing a printout of her TMJ. So if you'll notice, she isolates it by using some cropping tools in our ROI features, which is region of interest, so that she can minimize it down to a particular region. And that's important, and she's going to create as we're talking about the annotation ROI, that's important because once you, let me go back just a moment. Oh, well. That's important because then it eliminates and isolates the rest of the 3D volume or the surfaces that we don't need to print, and then we can now work on creating the label maps. And what that is that allows you to isolate. In her case, she isolated the two bone structures so she could print them out separately. And you have the tools in here to color map and create masks. As you can see here, see the highlighted areas here, and highlighted the particular areas, and then that's called a map. And then eventually, let's see, I may have skipped you. Notice the amber color here, and then the higher, the more yellow, canary yellow here. This is the isolation of the two layers. So now she can actually go in and create the model, which is what you see here. So this is the actual surface model. Can you see it there?
Yeah.
Okay, so once that is done, she then can save it, and this is what was a little, wouldn't say difficult, but a little confusing to me, unlike InVesallius, is that it saves it out as polydata, VTK data, and you then have to select those and turn them into STLs. So that's the only difference, and it's just a pull down. You go from the file that I just mentioned into the STL, and then you hit save, saves it in a folder. And in my case, I bring it in the NetFab to clean it up further. But there she goes, and there's your 3D printed object. So she was able to take that into wherever she wanted and show the actual movement of her TMJ. So that's a nice little, and I'll have that in the show notes. And later on, I'll actually do my own tutorial as well, using other anatomy areas like the brain. There's some tools that make this sometimes quicker. They're called water shedding, which is essentially with an MRI, and the brain will eliminate like the skull and other regions and leave you just with the brain itself. So it's a fairly powerful tool, and there's some different algorithms provided by other researchers to do that. So hats off to that individual for putting up this tutorial. So if you're interested in using 3D Slicer, which is a very powerful program, but the flow is a little difficult to get used to. There's a lot of tools, and like Photoshop and others, powerful, but a lot of things you can do in order to hang yourself. So follow this tutorial as well as the one that I put up later. Okay, and now moving on to the actual, let's see, the InVesallius. I found the InVesallius a little easier, and one of the reasons that I found it easier is that, first of all, it gives you a 1, 2, 3, 4 step process. Can you see that over on the left-hand side there? So first thing you do is you load the data. And essentially, you can import medical images, DICOM, just like 3D Slicer, or in my case, I was able to already make some changes and export them and then bring back my previous information into the InVesallius application itself. And then once you do that, you select the region of interest, just some of that, and you create masks for that. And if you notice, I created a mask region of the brain area. And then I can create the surface. So once I create this, I create the surface. And the surface is what you use in order to create the 3D model. And then you can go through here and then identify some more advanced features. And then you can also go down to the masks themselves, and you can literally use the masking tools that are available here in this next step, which I'm not going to go through because I don't want to mess this up, and paint this out. The one thing that I found difficult with InVesallius is that it did a good job of getting a general area, but if there were any spots of that, you literally had to go through slice after slice after slice. So if you've got 300 of these, you're literally cleaning up each slice. It's like going into Photoshop and cleaning up 300 images. So it's a little tedious, but the flow is pretty quick. And for some cases, the models show up pretty well, and they do have some built-in threshold levels so that you can do it fairly quickly, and then the cleanup can take you anywhere between a 30 to an hour, which is what it took me. And if you look over here, you can still see a lot of noise in here, so I would still have to go in there and clean it up. But it worked okay, and what I did is essentially just exported this, and what you do is you go to the export, and you hit Export 3D Surface, and then you just choose STL or any of the other variety of formats that it supports, and then you send it out to wherever you'd like. And then, like many other things, I bring it into NetFab, and then the way I cleaned up all these spurious shells, as you would call them, is that I just bring them into NetFab, go to the shells, and just delete all the shells that are outside of there so that I have just the larger shell, and all the others go away. And then this is a fairly high polygon, so I can reduce that. And then once it's cleaned up, I do a surface mapping again to clean it up, and then looked at any other issues like manifold issues and things like that. And once those are all cleaned up, I export it, and then I send it to a printer, and you get this. So
you need to make, for Halloween it would be a good one, you need to make a mold for Jell-O, and you can make a Jell-O brain, full size.
Well, and we'll probably discuss it later. If you remember, I did some molds earlier, but I also did an ice cube tray of the little Ultimaker by using negative volumes into a positive piece. And so I haven't put that up on their site yet, but I plan to. But yes, I truly agree with you. So what you would do is you would take the model that, let me jump back to that screen. You would just take this model here, and you would just put it in a cube, or in this case, what would you call it, a volume, and then you would subtract the volume from it, and then voila, you would have your mold, and then you could use it for Jell-O. The problem is most of the materials are a little bit stiff, so you need to find something with a little elasticity, probably ABS, or maybe even the PET material might work for a mold. Actually, PET might work because it is FDA approved, so it would be safe for food items. So I'd probably go in that direction. So that's kind of my tutorial in a nutshell. I'll expound upon that and put those up on YouTube over the next week. Again, I apologize that we ran late and didn't get a chance to actually show this. But if you're tuning in now, I hope this has been informative. We'll have links out to both InVesallius and 3D Slicer, as well as YouTube tutorials that other people have done for both applications. So on that about wraps it up. I've got one more item. By the way, did you notice my face in the pumpkin here?
That's great.
And I sent this to Shavaun. This is our Halloween-iversary.
Halloween-iversary. That's great. Man. Yeah, Renee and I, my girl and I, today is our first date was on Halloween.
Very cool.
You know.
Yeah. So when you act
it's the new Valentine's, man.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, it was in our case. We actually got married on this date. Our first marriage, we had a vampire wedding. I was kind of like a V-Lad type character, came out of a coffin. And she kind of walked in. We had smoke machines. Can't expect anything less today. Our 5th anniversary went to San Francisco to a haunted bread and breakfast, Victorian style, and we all dressed up Victorian style clothing. So we are still planning on our 15th and see where we're going to go. I'm sorry, our 10th, which is just around the corner. Next year is our 10th. So, as mentioned, we are going down to Santa Barbara, and we're going to enjoy the Day of the Dead tomorrow. But early in the morning, we're going to make ourselves up in Day of the Dead makeup, and then I'm going to scan us and then put it out on Sketchfab for those of you to enjoy using Structure Sensor, 4Eyes, and Itzy's 3D. By the way, Chris, you missed it in the beginning, but Sketchfab, and I think they've had it out there for some time, has announced the feature of downloading models now. And remember I mentioned that they could download you? Well, I brought that up today. So they can download a version of Chris if they wanted to.
Oh, great. Cool. That's good. Yeah. I like it. Sketchfab's great.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks to all of our listeners.
One more item. One more item, Chris. Upcoming events, there's only one event that I could find, and that's Inside Printing in Shanghai, which is between the 4th and 5th of November next week. So if you're in Shanghai, just a hop, skip, and a jump from San Francisco, go ahead and make it out there and make your presence known. Other than that, it's been quiet until the week after, and we'll talk about that next week. All right, so Chris, take it over.
All right. Well, this has been a great week. Lots of stuff going on in the 3D world. Make sure you go out and check out this HP printer. It's going to change the whole deal again. Here we go. Hold on to your pants, and we will see you next week on All Things 3D.
Bye.